Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to Dr. Asra. We are from Group 1. We'll be presenting our topic, which is Special 3-on-1 and Trade Liberalization. I will be the first presenter. My name is Nofazliana. So our topic is about the government imposed restriction on the movement of commodities or service across border, which is known as a trade barriers. There are various types of trade barriers, which is subsidies, standardization, tariff, quota, and also licenses. Today, we will discuss two examples of barriers, which is the first one is Special 3-on-1 and the second one is about trade liberalization.
Hello, my name is Anayil number 12, metric number 26893. I'm gonna explain about history of 301. Section 301 was revised in 1984 and 1988 at the request of the copyright and pharmaceutical industry to broaden the policy scope to include intellectual property. Protecting intellectual property rights in a fair and effective way became a 301 investigative and criminal breach after the amendment in 1984. So in 1988, a new amendment to the law was completed in order to form the Special 301 program, which focuses on protecting intellectual property. List of nations that deny adequate and effective protection of intellectual property or deny U.S. companies that rely on intellectual property equal and fair market access must be presented in this report in Government Gazette by the USTR in accordance with Special 301. So following the 1984 amendments that included insufficient levels of trademark rights as a possible factor of 301 actions, the authority to impose unilateral sanction under Section 301 was first used in a dispute over intellectual property. The administration of Reagan quickly put the new rule to use by opening investigation into Korea and Brazil, two developing countries with a history of protecting young industries. Each case ultimately resulted in the passing of new intellectual property legislation in the targeted nations, proving the plan to be a major success in the eyes of the market. That's all from me. The next topic will be presented by Zulfani.
Good day to my lecturer and to all my friends. My name is Rizky Zulfani and my metric number 268947. Now I'd like to presenting about what are 301 reports. So the Special 301 is an annual review process led by the Office of the United States Trade Representative, and it looks at the enforcement and protection of intellectual property in American trading partners all over the world. Each year, the Special 301 report must include a roster of priority foreign countries that have inadequate laws regarding intellectual property and are potentially liable for sanctions. The report also features a watch list and a priority watch list of states with questionable IP regimes. And also the U.S. Trade Law Special 301 requires an annual review of intellectual property protection and market access practice in foreign countries. The Special 301 report must list priority foreign countries with inadequate IP laws and potential sanctions. And also, intellectual property refers to creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, and symbols used in commerce. Okay, for the report Special 301, The United States Trade Representative Office annually compiles a special 301 report outlining the ways that foreign copyright, patent, and trademark laws hinder American export. And the U.S. TR is required to publish a list by April 30 of every year of the nations where IP protections are not adequate and effective, or where Americans who rely on IP rights are not given fair and equitable market access. The Special 301 report essentially reviews the effectiveness of IPR enforcement in U.S. Trading partners, nations, and however, contributions are not restricted to submissions from government, and also U.S. TR tries to give people, both U.S. citizens and people from other countries, specific organizations, local and international NGOs, and foreign governments as many options as possible. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative checks every year to evaluate how well intellectual property is protected and enforced in U.S. trading partners across the world. This report, which criticizes nations whose laws, policies, and practice do not offer American inventors, manufacturers, and suppliers of product and service with appropriate and effective IP protection. The list of nations and limitations on market access connected to IP in this report. Then the report also discuss trading associates like child that have broken their IP agreement with the United States. And the United States Trade Representative has been working with trading partners like Algeria, Argentina, Canada, and other countries to address concerns about IP protection and enforcement, as well as market access barriers for pharmaceuticals and medical devices. So the report focuses on the negative effect that the European Union's strategy for the protection of geographical indications in the EU and third country market has had on American producers and traders, and those who have prior trademarked right or who rely on the use of common names. So that's all from me. Next, I will pass to the next presenter.
Okay, I am Khairani Anisa, my metric number 268230. Now I need to present about trade liberalization. Trade liberalization developed rapidly in Europe in the 19th century. Trade liberalization is the process of removing or reducing restriction on the exchange of commodities and services across national borders. Trade liberalization is a very important thing in the global economy. Trade liberalization is important for a globalization and the introduction of free trade. This became known in the 1918, especially for developing countries. Trade liberalization has its pros and cons. Opponents of this concept focus on its effects, such as poor working conditions, disagreements, labor standards, and others. However, proponents of this idea argue that liberalization will encourage economic development supported by increased investment and physical capital. Next, Indonesia is one of the countries that has been involved in and supported that trade liberalization since the beginning, even since the New Order. Indonesia has been oriented toward liberal and pro-market economic policies. An example, the impact of trade liberalization in Indonesia is an increase in trade performance. Since 2003, ASEAN trade liberalization has been able to increase in Indonesian trade volume. This claim is supported by a more than twofold increase in export and import. In export and import volume during the period 2003 until 2010. Trade liberalization caused Indonesian export to increase by 10.94% and GDP to increase by 0.8% or 856 million US.
I will explain about the trade liberalization that happened in Philippines. Philippines began to liberalize trade in the late 20th century. This is due to a decrease in industrial protection driven by tariff barrier and import controls. There are also protection, import, and foreign exchange restriction and the overvaluation of the peso that distorted the trade. The second factor that made trade liberalization implied in the Philippines was the capital intervention that favored the heavy industry over light industry. This instrument created a bias in favor of industry that compete with import over export and agriculture, which had a negative impact on the efficient allocation of resources. Consumer items should take priority over capital and intermediate goods. And since 1981, the nation has worked to lower the total level of protection and the distribution of tariff protection within and across sector and industry. During the first TRP, they decided to decrease the tariff rate from 100% to 50%. Then they continued the policy to TRP2 and TRP3 in the following years after the balance of payment problem that happened in the 1990s. The effort at unilateral liberation improved the resource allocation and increased the overall competitiveness of indigenous industry. As a result, in the 1990s, it was able to take part in the much larger World Trade Organization and regional agreement like Asian Free Trade Area. There are pros and cons of trade liberalization. The first one is trade liberalization helped the local producer to have a comparative advantage through policies where they can produce any product or service at a low opportunity cost. The second one is price reduction that result from the trade liberalization. The substantial subsidies that trade protection provide, which are often focused at a small number of people, are not affordable for developing countries. And then the third one is the enhanced growth brought by the free trade itself, which has a tendency to raise the earning of the poor in a way that is roughly equal to that of the general population. For instance, new employment opportunities are given to the unskilled employee to help them reach a better skill in work environment. Trade liberalization also had proven that global inequality can be decreased since the 1990s. This is because the development can be partly attributed to emerging countries' faster economic growth as a result of trade liberalization. We move on to the cons of trade liberalization. One of the cons of trade liberalization is the structural unemployment. The balance of the economy typically changes as a result of trade liberalization. As a result of the particular industry closing, structural employment may frequently occur. Even when economic welfare increases, it may be challenging to make up for the workers that suffer due to the global competition. Then, trade liberalization may result in increased environmental exploitation. This is due to the increased production of raw material and the trade of toxic waste to nations with lenient environmental regulation. And the last one is for developing market. They are unable to compete in a free trade environment. Trade liberalization could be harmful. However, there may be an argument for this point because trade protectionism has existed in the majority of the economies. It is inaccurate to say that emerging markets cannot benefit from some tariff protection. Some contend that trade liberalization frequently favors the industrialized countries more often than the developing countries due to this argument. So that's all from me. I shall pass to the next presenter to conclude our discussion.
So, in conclusion, the Special 301 process is a rule-based administrative decision made by law of U.S. to determine whether other countries' laws meet legal standards. Determining whether a foreign law violates an international statute or an international agreement to which both the United States and a foreign country are parties is a part of the statutory standard. The second one is trade. Liberalization is an economic concept that refers to the ongoing sale of products between countries without being subject to export-import taxes or other trade barriers. Liberalization can also be said as releasing government interference in financial market, capital markets, and trade barriers. That's all from me and from our group. Thank you.